My name is Luke Schaefer, and this is an introduction to North Dakota's multi-tier system of supports. To provide you some background, I'm going to introduce to you a quick scenario from a North Dakota-sized school. Imagine two new students are enrolling after the school year is start. This is a K-12 building with about 222 students in it, and these two students are coming from another North Dakota school, John James and Sally Jessie James. At that school, they always let their students and parents know that they have a system in place to ensure every student gets every support that they need. So as two students come in to enroll, the secretary, Mrs. Simpson, has to ask a quick couple of questions. And what she needs to know most importantly as they are registering, after all of the logistical and demographic information is gathered, she needs to know what they scored on their 2016 spring NWEA math tests. She needs these so that they can determine the level of supports that they will be providing along with instruction. So as Mrs. Simpson greets and welcomes their parent in to get the paperwork started on them, she dives in to find that data. Since they came from another school, she knows that the NWEA scores will be in SLDS. She also knows that the homeroom teacher will need to be looking at the SABRs in 2 weeks for behavior. And since that has already been accumulated, she goes into the SLDS and runs the student directory report so that she can find student historical assessment page. At this point, she is set out to analyze some of the information that she collects. And she is going to be using a spreadsheet that the school has created for that analysis. With conditional formatting, it provides Mrs. Simpson a very quick snapshot. So while she may not know exactly what the RIT scores mean, you can see an example here. John James, when he tested in the spring of 6th grade, scored a 193 on his reading. This places him in need of intensive supports and instruction in the area of English language arts. Sally Jessie, on the other hand, scored a 286 in the spring of her 7th grade year, which places her at advancement, meaning she's already completed and has deep knowledge of everything that she would be learning in the 7th grade. This all was created by a team as they looked at and analyzed cut scores and set about what they could provide in terms of intensive and strategic supports, both below and above grade level. She now has her answer. Once she's put all of the scores into the spreadsheet, she knows that John is going to be needing Tier 3 instruction and intervention in reading and Tier 2 instruction and intervention in math. Sally Jessie, on the other hand, will need some advancement instruction and intervention and reading, and in math, she'll be looking just great with the core instruction. Few people need to find out about this information just in the short 20 minutes that they are in the office getting registered. Mrs. Simpson is able to look up and provide this information very quickly. So she needs to let the counselor know so that that counselor can begin looking at the appropriate class schedule for both of those students. The special ed strategist, who's also called the MTSS coordinator, who's also the volleyball coach, and several other shoes, that special ed strategist is going to take a hard look at the interventions and also is going to start looking at the next round of inquiry that she needs to do for John, recognizing that he needs a Tier 2 intervention and instruction for math. She needs to diagnose if it's a computation, application, or concept issue that they will be able to address. And so she plans for that. Finally, Mrs. Jackson, the principal, is going to sit down with the parents to let them know everything that they have to support both of their children's education. This moves them into taking care of the work And so John will actually sit down right during this first set of introduction to the school to grab a 18-minute STAR math assessment. That will give John's guardian the opportunity to finish all of that demographic paperwork. Meanwhile, a plan will begin to take shape around weekly assessments to track progress, as well as implementing interventions. Initially, the plan will be for John James to attend a double dose math course, which he needed tier 2 instruction and intervention during their 7th hour. He'll also be attending corrective reading in place of the 7th grade language arts. This then will create a new set of questions to be asked around progress monitoring assessments. As I discussed, all of these were able to be applied because the school had already mapped out how they would screen, assess, and diagnose depending on the level of assessment provided. In this case, John needed Tier 2 strategic supports. In this, he fell between the 11th and 30th percentile on the map, and so they needed to determine, is it computation, application, or concept based. Once they figure out which one of those focus areas, then they can develop his skills appropriately through the double dose class. Meanwhile, because he is intensive in reading, he is more than 2 years behind. And so he'll be receiving comprehensive supports, which will be in the corrective reading series that they use, focusing on decoding comprehension. Meanwhile, Sally Jesse is in advanced, and it's been demonstrated that she needs more challenging work, one that advances past 7th grade. And so instead of just providing enrichments, they'll be able to advance the content through a deeper comprehension and strategies in writing. This is what it looks like. They have core instruction initially, and then they are provided I-time, which is their double dose. So you can see each of the students, one in purple and one in red. When it's time to move to their second dose, you can see how they shift, and all the students go along with. Now they're in guided groups aligned with the specific needs that those students have as a group. You can see that some are in guided study, some are in advancement, some are in either computation accuracy or basic integers and simple equations for math, while some others are in solving word problems for math, but being instructed in the ELA classroom. This is just one way, not the way, that this school is providing supports to their students. Finally, what's important to note is that all of this was taken into account because of the awareness that they had to create a plan for all students that can begin at registration so that students start at the highest possible level as soon as possible. And then they make adjustments based on those students' response to the instruction. I needed to share all of that with you so that you understood what it is that we're talking about today. And since we're talking about this multi-tiered system of supports in North Dakota, I'll give you just the briefest of background information. In 2009, it was recognized that after several years of training, we did not have the simplest way to offer these trainings. And so a new grant cycle was awarded through the State Personnel Development Grant, and it has been working for the last 5 years. We saw shifts in several acronyms across the years and recognized that we had a need to really refine what we were doing as a system. In 14-15, we evaluated the work that we had been doing in trainings with schools and determined that vision for MTSS in North Dakota was needed to be formed. Finally, in 15-16, training was refined, training was developed, and we piloted several systems project-based trainings that would allow schools to build the system that they needed to provide instruction for both academics and behavior, regardless of the content. Throughout this process, we've identified that at the state level, there are many things that a state level team needs to work on in terms of creating resources and building work plans, developing capacity, and busting down barriers. Meanwhile, our REAs are poised to provide supports to schools as they have done through trainings, through coaching, providing materials and resources. Finally, all of those feed down into our schools where the great work is happening. And the school leadership team works with the district and the building so that the supports needed for students can be provided in a systemic fashion. I would be remiss to give an introduction if we didn't have a little bit of the definition of multi-tier systems of support in North Dakota. As you can see, this is a framework by which all students are provided the best opportunities to succeed, both academically and behaviorally. This is a focus on instruction and interventions, but they're matched to student need and monitored frequently so that changes in instructions or goals can be made regularly. Finally, the last piece is that all of these pieces are covered and backed in data to improve student learning as well as support staff in their work. Now, MTSS sounds a lot like RTI, but they're not quite the same thing. Here are the biggest similarities. In both, all students get what they need in order to learn. They both have multiple levels of increasingly intensifying instruction. They both include assessments and database decision making. They both have evidence-based instruction and intervention, and they both most definitely require plans for how students respond to instruction and intervention. But there are differences. In RTI, frequently we focus just on a triangle of tiers. What we know about RTI is that the process as it is currently used in most schools fits within the MTSS framework. MTSS oftentimes requires more than 3 tiers to address both high and low achieving students, and it has a heavy emphasis on the support needed in leadership, culture, professional development, fidelity, and evaluation. Finally, MTSS includes planning for a full system and not just planning for problems as they arrive. There are 5 main components in MTSS. These are based on several pieces of research across the nation. The 5 essential components are assessment, database decision-making, multi-tier instruction and intervention, infrastructure and support mechanisms, fidelity, and evaluation. All 5 of these used together account for a continuous improvement model. You see, with NDMTSS, we begin with our needs. We plan how to address those needs. We implement that plan. We check to see how well it's working. And then we go back to another round of needs. This continuous improvement cycle is what assists us in ensuring that we can provide the best supports to students. These 3 essential components, assessment, database decision-making, and multi-tier instruction, are often found in RTI. You can see that assessment is focused on the process of collecting, reviewing, and using information to make decisions. Oftentimes recognized as universal screening, diagnostic, progress monitoring, and outcome assessments, these are used to inform our database decision-making. This idea of database decision-making is one that focuses on optimizing the use of data in order to inform individual student instruction, identifying strengths and weaknesses in a classroom, and looking at trends and gaps across a school district. So we use this as a team process to ensure that not only are we looking at one classroom, one student, we also ensure that we can look across grade levels, schools, and a system. Finally, multi-tier instruction, oftentimes found in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. This is that multi-tier approach that efficiently differentiates instruction for students. Tier 1 has a focus on every student. Every student will receive core instruction. Tier 2 then adds a level of support to the students who are not getting enough from Tier 1. Most pointedly, students who are at risk of performing below their expected outcomes, which means some students are performing above grade level but still not at their expected outcome. Finally, Tier 3 is a third layer of support that we can give to students, provide for students in a smaller setting on top of Tier 2 and Tier 1 instruction and interventions. But what is often missing in practice in schools using RTI are infrastructure and support mechanisms and fidelity and evaluation. You see, frequently we leave out some of the vision, prevention, culture, communication, leadership teams that need to be in place. And sometimes we forget to ask the question, did we do what we said we would, and is it working the way we want it to work? Those two questions can guide our fidelity and evaluation process very well. You see, in infrastructure and support mechanisms, we look at four main areas that are frequently overlooked. Schedules, when classes and interventions start and end, how much uninterrupted time is available, what transitions look like, leadership from the board all the way down to teacher leaders, ensuring that commitment and attendance is there, communication across everything that happens in the district, the school, or the grade level is extremely important. In essence, what we're frequently missing in terms of infrastructure and support mechanisms is adult support. We need time so that schools can consistently meet and discuss in teams. We need ongoing coaching opportunities for our teachers. We need job-embedded PD where the teachers, staff, and instructional leaders can recognize their own data and work across time. We also know that we must be receiving feedback as educators in the room so that we can continue to get better at what we do. As North Dakota has evaluated the work that has been done around MTSS, we know that there are several things that schools can engage in order to build their system. In order to standardize the process but customize the implementation, a leader should know what they are about to embark on when they begin MTSS. Putting together the right team and understanding where they're at in current implementation status is very important. Then comes the steps of building the system. Planning for implementation, that includes curriculum and intervention training, building school-wide expectations, creating pathways for students, renewing the commitment after it's been installed, ensuring that Tier 1 is a focus for our work. We also recognize that we cannot complete this work unless we monitor and evaluate our system. Now, much of this sounds a bit like a continuous improvement process that we're already using. So how do Advanced Ed and MTSS work together? The assessments component is much like the new school quality factor, impact of instruction for Advanced Ed. Standard 3, teaching and assessing for learning, the new school quality factor, efficacy of engagement, is database decision making and multi-level instruction. Standard 5, using results, the new implementation capacity, is all of our fidelity and evaluation, ensuring that we're doing it the way it's intended to be done and checking to see if it worked the way we wanted it to work. Finally, Standard 4, 2, and 1 fit into healthy culture, high expectations, resource management, and clear direction. All of these feed into infrastructure and support mechanisms. In essence, we are collecting much of the same data for Advanced Ed and MTSS as we prepare our work. However, they are both needed in order to improve our schools. You see, Advanced Ed helps us determine what effective schools do to meet student needs by providing us high standards and school quality factors. Meanwhile, NDMTSS helps us determine how schools can meet student needs through the use of building their system in assessments, database decision making, multi-tiered instruction infrastructure support, and fidelity and evaluation. Now, what can you do to determine if you're ready to get started? There is an NDMTSS fidelity rubric that allows you to score your school. Here's a sample of it. This is just the assessments page, and it talks about specifically your screening process. A school team could sit down with this document and provide some evidence of the work that they're doing to determine where they're at. Certainly, finding website information at DPI or from the REAs would yield great results in determining trainings that would assist in this as well. In North Dakota, we are looking at improvement. Improving schools, improving students, and improving success. If you have any questions, please refer to the contact information below.